Hello, my name is Joy Ashby-Cornthwaite, and I will be your host for this episode of the live stream show, MyDiabetesHQ Live. Stay tuned to hear how these dietitians and advocates are working to shift the marketing of diet away from pomp and circumstance towards a concept of nutrition that is more in line with the current landscape of food from farm to table to culture to fuel, to form a more practical approach to health and wellness, one that is sustainable for health and wellness maintenance, to performance, and preserves mental health and wellness. It's a different approach and philosophy to nutrition. Yes, we know. Send us your questions and comments as we speak. Today's episode is coming up right now. You don't want to miss this. A gentle reminder that the content shared during the MyDiabetesHQ live broadcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, nor treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have about diabetes or any other chronic disease. This weekly broadcast is developed by and produced by Cities Changing Diabetes volunteers here in Houston and in Philadelphia, the two U.S. cities in the global network of cities working to improve diabetes prevention, care, and management. You can learn more about Cities Changing Diabetes by going to citieschangingdiabetes.org. So let's welcome my team this morning. This morning we have Jessica Isaac, registered dietitian and board certified sports. I always get it wrong.
A specialist in sports dietetics, yeah.
Yes, and she is the UCLA Sports Dietitian and private practice owner. She's joined today by Houston Core Team member and diabetes advocate Reva Verma, CEO of Reneka App Builders. And we're here to give you guys this really important conversation. It's something that's very close to all of our hearts. Jess, thank you for joining us today. Can you begin by just telling our viewers about your passion about nutrition and the language of nutrition?
Yeah, so as Joyce said, I am a sports dietitian at UCLA. I work with the men's and women's basketball teams, but I also operate a private practice, and a lot of the focus of the content that I create is about dispelling nutrition myths around diet culture and reframing the way that we look at, talk about, and feel about food.
Excellent. And Reva, tell us a little bit about yourself and why this is near and dear to your heart.
So I have been living with type 1 diabetes for 18 years, and nutrition has been, part of my care and something that has been at the forefront of taking care of my diabetes and just my body in general. So nutrition has been an evolving thing for me.
Mm-hmm. And today you both are here with me to help redefine nutrition. And so before we begin, let's get some fundamentals down. Why are we eating, Jess?
Yeah. So food is essential to life. It's energy for bodily functions. We know that, right? Well, for building new cells and tissues, to protect our body, but also to nourish our body. And beyond that, food is a connector of people. We have food as a centerpiece at social events and cultural experiences, and in so much more. So food really goes beyond just being fuel and goes into all parts of our lives, really.
Mm-hmm. And Reva was talking about the additional portion of food, which is enjoyment, just a little while ago. Reva, can you speak to that again?
So, we all love to enjoy food, and there's a lot of, people say self-control, and I'm like, self-control doesn't exist sometimes. If I really want something, or I've been looking forward to eating something, and then like Jessica was saying, it's part of cultural and celebrations, and food is just such an everyday center of our lives type of thing, when it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? Like we can redefine how we think about food. And I think that's something that we can kind of take a page out of Jessica's book on how to learn how to enjoy food, but do it in the best way possible for us.
And so let's pull up this definition here that you ladies so wonderfully opened us up with. But this is the, textbook definition of nutrition, right? The process of providing or obtaining the food necessary for health and growth, and then food or nourishment. Now, thinking about all the different spaces that you experience nutrition in, Jess, can you take us back to what we're hoping to accomplish this morning? What do we want to share with the viewers out there who are looking and saying, well, I thought I was coming to this broadcast to learn about what to eat and what not to eat. What do you want to tell them about this?
Yeah, I want to tell you that even if you are a person living with diabetes, all foods can fit into your diet. And we want to actually even take away the word diet and kind of in the way that we look at it, because I think we view diet as an ugly thing, and then we attach guilt and shame to that. And that affects how we feel about ourselves. So our food choices make us feel, if we aren't making a certain food choice, we might feel shame in ourselves. And we really want to disconnect that because you shouldn't be feeling that way about your food choices.
And these are just some of the spaces, that we have to make these considerations. So with performance, like the work that Jess does on a daily basis, across to nutrition, health, and wellness when you're coaching people, and then also just across the lifespan for people living with diabetes and also people living with any sorts of chronic disease or wanting to prevent chronic disease and maintain their wellness. So how do we start off with thinking about the language and then how that coincides with our goals? Jess, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so maybe it's first by just taking stock of how you feel about food and the words that you're using around food. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But, if you're defining food choices as this is a good food for me, or this is a bad food for me, or this is off limits, or this is restricted, it's kind of sets off a whole spiral in how you view food and how you react around food.
And we can pull that up, Jess,
Sure.
Since you're talking about making words matter in language.
Sure.
Let's pull that up first. So
Yeah.
Go ahead. You can explain this one.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So these are some words that we just don't really like. Good, bad. I think that has no relation when we're talking about food. Foods don't have morals and ethics. And when we attach words like good food, bad food, not allowed food, that sets us up on a restrictive pattern. And restrictive leads to binging. So we just have this ugly cycle that's not really helpful for anybody. It doesn't matter really where you are in your life. Never eat this food, always eat this food. These are rules that often people are given across the spectrum, but especially those living with diabetes. And those just simply shouldn't fit into your vocabulary because of those negative connotations that are attached with it.
Excellent. I love that. So I love that we're taking those out and we're throwing them in the trash. So what should we think about replacing them with?
Yeah. So you want to flip to our other side there? Yeah. So looking at food as more health promoting or less health promoting, more nutrient rich or less nutrient rich, recognizing that foods have benefits beyond just health. There are some other reasons why we might choose foods in certain situations to take care of us, to nourish us. We want to promote decisions that are promoting decisions and successful achievements. So really encouraging the good work that you're doing to reframe how you're viewing food, and identifying and addressing barriers. Sometimes when we are making food choices, it's not because we have a loss of control or otherwise. It might just be we don't have access to something. We don't know how to make something. We aren't sure how a food can fit into our lifestyle or with our particular health conditions.
Yeah. And so I think, like you were just saying about not understanding or knowing how a certain food may impact a decision in a certain moment in a certain way, I think I like this one here where we were talking about establishing a goal. So establishing a nutrition goal, discussing options, coming back to reality, what can you prepare? How do you prepare it? All sorts of different personalized things. And then making considerations around, will you do it? And what is your motivation, and finding those things. Is that sort of how you approach it?
Totally, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so for our viewers out there who are watching, what are some of your nutrition oriented thinking about in these terms and the ways that we're talking about this morning? What would you like to accomplish with regards to your nutrition, say in the next week or in the next couple of weeks? And how do you wish to accomplish that? Drop some of your ideas in the comments and we can respond to them. So something that is really important when considering nutrition needs is mental health as well. Reva, can you tell us how those decisions help to shape? Jess was talking about emotions and nutrition decisions. Tell us how that shaped your life and your world, and why this discussion today is so important in that context.
Right. So I think it's not a simple answer. It's kind of a complex issue that has to be broken down. Mm-hmm. So mental health is so important. And, like when you're feeling down about yourself, you aren't going to think about making the smartest food choices either. So that may mean that you binge eat, or that you don't eat at all and go long periods of time, which are not like good decisions for your blood sugar, right? So when, like, my journey with mental health has meant that it goes back to your previous slide of saying, we needed to have a goal, and how are you going to reach that goal? So for me, to go back to what is a realistic expectation, if I would binge eat, then my blood sugar would spike, which would then make my emotions go out of whack, which didn't help with, my overall mental health. So kind of having perspective and realization that I was in this cycle was the first step of a breakthrough. Then the second step was understanding that when I do eat like high carb or high fat meals, my blood sugar will spike later, which then makes my emotions go out of whack then. So for me personally, I had to kind of transition to a lower carb type of meal plan in order to keep my basal kind of lower throughout the day. And that helped me, keep it mitigates the spikes of dropping and rising, which helps with your overall mental health. It's all connected. But that took, time to realize, and a lot of coaching from other people and mentors to understand that that's a cycle.
Mm-hmm. And Jess, can you talk about what Reva is describing in terms of short-term goals, long-term goals, flexibility in food and nutrition decisions, and how to build your own confidence and one another's confidence in getting to the spaces where Reva's had a lot of experience, but some people are, some of our viewers may just be getting into, nutrition decisions and goals.
Yeah, it seems like Reva did the work in that she took a really good self-assessment, and she saw, what is it about what's happening with my condition right now that is making me not feel great. When her blood sugar was feeling kind of out of control, she wasn't feeling great. And she saw that was affecting her. So she assessed, well, how do I control my blood sugar better? And for her, it meant dialing in her nutrition and adjusting her carbohydrate intake to control that blood sugar better. That gave her the end result of just feeling better about herself yourself and on a day-to-day basis. That looks different for everybody, right? Like there's no one diet for everybody. There's no one nutrition plan. Even if you are a person with living with diabetes, it's different across the spectrum, right? But when you identify what is it about my life that I'm not enjoying, or what is it about the way that I'm feeling that I'm not enjoying, and how can I make that change? You start to take stock of the things that go into it, your food choices, your food decisions, your feelings around food, your feelings about yourself, maybe even looking at how you connect your feelings to that number on your meter, right? Like, are you seeing a high number and feeling like less than because that number is high? Are you attaching your meaning and value to that number? I can definitely see that being the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let's pull this up here just so that, for our visual folks, they can see what we're talking about. So you were speaking to long-term successes, building that nutrition understanding, and then develop the relationship with food. And then you're having and owning your own decisions. All of these things are linked to, happiness, your definition of success. Maybe it is a lab value success, but for Reva, some of these situations were just making herself feel better, right? So making sure that she didn't feel unwell. And then highlighting and championing and celebrating those successes so that you can grow your self-esteem, your emotional intelligence around food and your glucose values, and how you feel, and then building this self-confidence to make those short-term immediate need decisions that may stem from, figuring out what's going on with your life. Is that a good synopsis of what you two ladies so lovely were so great in saying just now?
Yeah, definitely. And I also think if you look at that intelligence portion of the circle, I think that comes with time. Like your self-esteem and self-confidence and emotional intelligence, it's like you're saying, it's all connected. And over time, as you get better at it and you see it working for yourself and you feel better overall, you can start, kind of intuitively eating. You can look at a plate and be like, I kind of want to stick to these foods and these portions because I know it'll make me feel more energized, or I know I won't have a spike in my blood sugar as drastic if I eat like this. So just, having that self-confidence takes a little bit of time and people should understand that and have grace. Like, you're going to mess up and you're going to have setbacks because, like you're saying, people have an emotional connection to food.
Mm-hmm. And Jess, how, Reva said it takes time. What are some first steps, and then maybe situations in which you want to check back in with yourself with relationship to your nutrition and your food decisions? Can you kind of show us a little bit of a timeline? Of course, everyone's going to be different, but just a little bit of a guidance.
Yeah, I think it starts with that nutrition education piece, right? Understanding how foods function in your body and what affects your blood sugar and what affects, all these other aspects, and understanding how when to eat carbs and what to pair it with. Once you understand these things, then you can start building that confidence, as Reva was describing, building that confidence because you know what food choices to make and how those can now relate to your blood sugars. And plus, when you start to then putting this work into action, putting what you've learned into action, and recognizing that you do have control and you can make changes that move the scale in the positive direction as far as your goals and your particular for managing your condition. Once you have built up that confidence and you've seen that you can do it, gosh, the sky's the limit, right? Then you feel like it's no longer scary, right? Because you know what you need to do. And that can look different for everybody. Some people, I know people that I work with in private practice. Some people I'm working with for a couple of months. Sometimes I'm working with clients for years. It really depends on where you start and what you need to know in order to build that confidence. And there might be a lot of skills that you need to build along the way too.
Mm-hmm. Reva, what are some of the skills you've used and identifying, decisions within the moment. Say for like, hyperglycemic, like a time where your blood glucose is high. What are some skills that you've learned that make managing it a little bit easier for you in that moment?
So I can use exercise, for example. I used to crash if I did a high intensity workout.
Mm-hmm.
In the past year or so, I would say, I think I have noticed that instead of crashing, I will have this temporary spike during my workout now. So but then I will crash after my workout. So it's like I'm going like this. So now I keep a protein bar or a protein shake with me so that immediately after I work out, I'll take like a small little bolus to bring me back to normal, but drink a protein shake or a protein bar in order to like maintain me at a safe level. And that way I don't drop and I feel like I'm satiated and I'm good to go. So that's been like a small learning thing. I will say personally, in the past year, I decided that I was going to really hone in on my nutrition and I started counting macros. So I have a spreadsheet that I fill in every single day and I track in an app on my phone. So I've become way more strict with myself. I know that doesn't work for a lot of people, but I needed that sort of accountability and I needed to like have a visual to see like if I'm just like going through the day and eating and I have a way of justifying to myself and rationalizing that yeah, I ate, within a certain amount of calories or macros, but if I actually log it, it gives me that accountability. So for me, I needed that type. And I've seen significant improvement in the way that I eat. I eat way more balanced meals. I guess it just depends. Like that's just my personality type. I needed that type of accountability.
Yeah, and Jess, I think I'm going to come to you with this question now. Reva highlights the fact that she needs accountability and she wants to keep track of it. She's very data driven. Does this concept or way of looking at nutrition doesn't negate those things? Because there'll be some people who are watching that say, well, it's too flexible. Maybe you do need to be regimented because it's a safety situation. What do you say to those viewers?
I think each person's really, really different. Some people are going to be like Reva, that like the data, that like the accountability, that like the confidence coming from having that control. Whereas others, having too much control and not being flexible with food choices can lead to restriction and binging in this like diety kind of a cycle. So that might not work for other people, but it might be appropriate for others. I would say find the thing that works for you. If you have the nutrition education and the intuition to be able to make food choices without having that regimen, then that might be the path that makes you feeling most free of this this dark cloud that hangs over you when it comes to how do I navigate this food space? How do I navigate this world and keep my blood sugars under control? So it's different for everybody. And I personally, when the clients that I work with, I like the approach of having them understand how foods function in their body so they can make food choices with a lot of flexibility and a lot of flexibility in their choices. But there's certainly some people that are going to do better with a method like Reva's.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So neither of those situations are mutually exclusive. You also can, because it's over the course of time, you can transition during a time of, where you're tracking to a time where you're not tracking to a time where you're tracking. It's okay.
Right. I saw we had a question, Joy.
Oh, we do. Okay. What's our question? see here.
So the question is, when one falls down on their nutrition goals, how does one get themselves back on track?
Do you want to take that one, Jess?
Sure. So I think it's you have to do a self-assessment. You have to figure out, okay, where did I get off track, and why did I get off track? Maybe it wasn't because maybe you had like a self-sabotage moment. Maybe there was a night where you were just had a hankering for something sweet, and you just indulge more than you wanted to. And so maybe you look at, okay, why did I make that choice? Was it because I'm not allowing myself to have that food at all? And because of the restriction, that's why I'm finding myself craving this food more and more and feeling like I have a loss of control around that food. Then you have some data there to go back to the drawing board of how do I now assess this problem? Like, I didn't throw the goal out the window, but something went wrong here. Figuring out what that was, what that sticking point was, where you got off course. Maybe your plan is too restrictive, and that's what's caused you to get off course. Maybe you had a week where you just didn't feel like cooking or grocery shopping, and that's why you got off course. Figuring out what it was that caused you to get off track, and identifying the barriers around that and the challenges around that and how you get past that, then you can help yourself get back on track. It's never necessarily starting over, it's just picking up where you left off.
Exactly. And those are all part of the skill building over time. I think a lot of us, we live in a society where there's automatic, we can jump on our phones and get exactly the answer that we want right now. We can get in our car and go and get, we can order on like that big yellow box store and it comes to us the same day. All of those things happen so immediately that I think a lot of times we forget that learning about taking care of our bodies and about ourselves will take time. You're not going to have all the answers to your nutrition journey in one moment or in one day or in one session.
But if you are going through these cycles repeatedly and you see it, then that's the time to get help. Like, go see a nutritionist, go see a mental health expert. Don't just sit there and let it keep happening over and over again. Do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're a viewer out there and you are a caregiver and you're thinking, I think maybe, my so-and-so who I care for and who I love, maybe this is the time for them to go see a dietitian. And there's never not a good time to see someone. So, or to ask for help. So that's a really great point, Reva. And so you can always be the trigger for someone else and say, hey, a lot of times you can do sessions together. So you could go together as well to learn some more items. So is there anything else that we missed that y'all want to share? I know we wanted to ask about happiness, right? And how that happiness is connected to success and nutrition choices and decisions. So here's our time now. We're going to go ahead and ask our viewers. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not super happy, wanting some changes perhaps, and 10 being, you feel like you're on the right track. How happy are you with your nutrition knowledge and decisions right now? And there aren't any wrong answers, remember. So I'm gonna answer for me, since I don't know if anybody wants to know this. But I think right now I'm at maybe 7, 8. And that's because I have to keep track and remind myself to hydrate. So if I can get outside and get really sweaty, and work out outdoors, then I can remind myself to drink. But it's only just now getting warm in Houston. So when I worked out for, the past few months, I wouldn't sweat so much. So then I would kind of forget to drink. So I think that I could do a lot better on my hydration. And so I'm going to be working on that and spending a lot more time outside working out instead of inside working out and getting a sweat. So Serena says she's about a 7 too. So I think a lot of times there's something that we can assess that's a little bit, that we can work on. What about you guys?
I feel like I'm at a 6 or a 7. I do pretty well with food during the week, but then when it comes to the weekend, it's really hard to account for alcohol intake, drinking water, and making sure you're eating like on a schedule and like healthy meals. So that's an area that I want to improve in.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm probably a 7 or 8 myself. I notice that some days I get caught up in work and I miss meals, or I just don't eat the right things, or I'm not making food choices that I would like to make based on time and what I have access to. And then there's, I'm just getting now back into an exercise routine, kind of fell off for a while with COVID, and just didn't get as much movement in my days as I would have liked to. So I'm getting back on that train now. So hopefully that 7, 8 will turn into a 9, 10 here soon.
Yeah. Especially just like speaking it out and then knowing that it's something that you want to work out and finding the support around you to make it happen is really good. So Umesh asks that the language around managing diabetes and food is so full of terms that are negative and make people feel at fault and ashamed. How do we change this to a more positive approach? Like what steps can, I guess, each of us and maybe our viewers, what steps can we take as an individual to change this approach?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with language too, and the words that we tell ourselves matter, right? If we tell ourselves we have a high number and so we're bad because of that, then we're going to feel bad and we're going to have guilt and shame. But if we detach emotion from our numbers and detach emotion from our food choices, then we can and build in like some more positive self-talk in there. I made this food decision because it sounded good and I've worked hard today and I wanted to enjoy this. I made this food decision because it was my kid's birthday party and I wanted a piece of cake for my kid's birthday party because I should be able to enjoy that celebration. And when you make it more about choices and take away that negative connotation as far as those good, bad, shouldn't, should, that can be a place to start. Mm-hmm. But for some people that can be challenging, right? These ideas can go really, really deep. This diet culture is ingrained in us from a very, very young age, and it sticks with us throughout life. So some of those wounds are really deep, and I think it really takes you taking stock of your feelings around food and your feelings around choices before you're able to navigate away from that.
Mm-hmm. And Reva, a question for you as someone living with diabetes who's gone through the nutrition education and sort of training of the past. What would you say needs to be done on a broader scale, on a larger scale, as a person living with diabetes to change the language?
On a broader scale, I think, our providers need to reinforce that. Okay, let me rephrase this. Our providers need to support us by helping us detach emotion from those numbers, like how Jessica was saying. So when you go in for doctor's visits, instead of being like, your A1C is 9 point something, why is it like this? Bad, bad, bad. It should be like, hey, I noticed that your A1C is a little more elevated than past visits. Is there something going on? Is there something that I can help with, connect you with someone to help you get through these things? Taking more of that approach in the language written about nutrition and diabetes. All the negative words that were on that slide before need to be removed. More talk about it like this needs to be done. Advocacy needs to be done. Yeah, just it's going to take a while, but all of these negative words need to be removed from our verbal and written.
Yeah, I think that, I think that this is not that I'm pulling you into another duty or a job, because I so often pull everybody that I know into volunteerism in some way, shape, or form. But I think that there was a really huge push that was very, very successful with the Academy of Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists that have really pushed to change the language of diabetes. I think we need that same push in the nutrition realm. And
Exactly.
I think, to have someone say, there were directives, there were whole trainings done that said, this is how we, as an institution, as a group of diabetes care and education specialists, this is how we will rewrite all of our language, our presentations, as we're speaking to others, as we are modeling behaviors. I think that that might be something, Jess, that I'm pulling you in right now to do. Reva has said it, from the people that we care for. This is what they want from us. And I think that on a broader scale, we need to address that. We need to say from all the upper echelons, this is how we're going to approach nutrition from henceforth.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I think you would also identify eating disorders faster and easier. You would probably help people not feel as ashamed to ask for help too, which I know this segment was not focused on that, but that's something that should be prioritized as well.
Excellent. What say you, Jess? Are we changing the world?
Yes, totally. Yeah. And I think it does. It's really important that, especially as healthcare providers, whether you're a physician, whether you're a dietitian, that you're very sensitive in the language that you use. That I like to practice in a weight neutral way where we're removing the stigma around weight. I think that's something that definitely bleeds over into the population living with diabetes, right? Of looking at weight as a problem as instead of a symptom, and not the problem, right? Same thing with blood sugar numbers. It's a symptom, not the problem, right? You're not bad because of the numbers. We go back here. Some of the things that we talked about were A1C out of compliance, right? Blood sugar out of control. Words like those. When you're someone that is going to see a provider and you're feeling very vulnerable and you're asking for help and you're hearing all of these words, it just feels so shameful, right? And it makes you feel a certain way about yourself. And it's really, we have to do better. We have to do better there in changing how we're talking about these sorts of things and how we're making people feel. We need to make them feel supported, not punished for something that they're experiencing.
Yeah, that was so beautifully put, Jess. We have to do better. I love that. I love that. So I know we wanted to sort of add a little bit of levity, but with some seriousness as well. So we want to be here. We want you guys to join us this morning in saying a fond farewell to diet and to the language of diet. I love this because it says, "Dear diet, things just aren't going to work between us. It's not me, it's you. You're tasteless, boring, and I can't stop cheating on you." So even though we say that with a great deal of levity, we're very, very, sincere in our shared voices and saying, let's change the language around nutrition. Let's do better for ourselves, for our children, for those of us who have kids, and for those that we care and love for who may be living with chronic disease. Excellent. Thank you both for being here with me today. I am so honored to have you both take time out of your Saturday to come here and speak on this super important topic. And I hope we've changed some lives and hearts today. So thank you all for being here, our viewers, for joining. And as always, I'm so appreciative of the fact that you all took time this morning to come and listen to our broadcast. Please leave us messages and share this with someone else who may benefit from hearing the words that we said this morning. We do have a quick survey on YouTube and Facebook, where we would like to get your feedback on the program as well as recommendations for future episodes. Help to make My Diabetes Live better by filling out this survey. So to our viewers, we hope that the goal of this series has met with you today, that you support one another in changing the philosophy around nutrition and celebrating all of the successes. Mark your calendars. We will be broadcasting every Saturday, 10 a.m. Central and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Our next episode will air next Saturday, April 17th. Thank you for being a part of My Diabetes HQ Live. See you next time.